Welcome back to my channel, Famous and Fabulous. They thought it would be just another routine investigation. But when the FBI stormed the secluded estate of legendary actor Gene Hackman, what they found underground left even the most seasoned agents in shock. Beneath the sprawling property, a hidden tunnel stretching for miles had been expertly carved out beneath the foundations of the estate. At first glance, it looked like an abandoned bunker, but what was inside would change everything. What was Hackman hiding, and why had no one uncovered this secret before? Stay tuned, because this story takes a turn you won't see coming. Gene Hackman is a name synonymous with Hollywood greatness, with 2 Academy Awards and roles in classics like The French Connection, Unforgiven, An Enemy of the State. He was one of the most respected actors of his time. Then, in 2004, he vanished from the film industry, retiring from acting and retreating into an intensely private life. He moved far away from Hollywood, avoiding the spotlight. Entirely, fans assumed he simply wanted peace, but rumors swirled stories of strange activity around his estate, whispers of underground construction and sightings of unknown visitors at odd hours. Was there something more to his retreat from the public eye? Apparently, it had everything to do with his background. If you've ever been told you weren't good enough, Gene Hackman's story is one you need to hear. He wasn't born into Hollywood fame. He didn't have connections. He wasn't the type of actor casting directors fought over. In fact, he was voted least likely to succeed. But what if I told you that the very things people saw as his weaknesses became the driving force behind his success? This is the untold story of how Gene Hackman defied the odds, one rejection, one failure, and won one fight at a time. And trust me, the road was anything but easy. Gene Hackman wasn't raised in luxury. His childhood was shaped by instability, moving from town to town as his father changed jobs. Born January 30th, 1930 in San Bernardino, California, young John had no idea that his life would be full of unexpected twists. His father worked as a newspaper pressman, and while it was an honest job, it didn't provide much. His mother Anna tried to keep the family together, but money was always tight. Then came the moment that changed everything. When Gene was just 13 years old, his father walked out on the family. It wasn't a dramatic argument. No loud goodbyes. No promises. To turn, his father simply shook his hand, got into his car, and drove away, never looking back. That single event shaped Gene's outlook on life. Trust didn't come easy after that. He learned that people could leave at any moment, that the world wasn't fair, and that if he wanted to survive, he had to do it on his own. But rather than letting the pain consume him, he buried it deep inside, fueling a fire that would burn for decades. Gene wasn't an exceptional student. He had a rebellious streak and hated authority. His teachers saw him as disruptive rather than promising to them he was just another troublemaker who wasn't going anywhere in life. At home, things weren't any better. His mother struggled to support the family, and Gene felt out of place. The structured world of school didn't interest him. He didn't know what he wanted, but he knew he didn't want to be ordinary. Then at 16 years old, he made a drastic decision, one that would change everything. He dropped out of high school and faked his age to enlist in the US Marine Corps. Why? Because he was searching for something bigger than himself. The Marine Corps wasn't a place for dreamers. It was a brutal, disciplined, and unforgiving world. And for someone like Gene, who had spent his life questioning authority, it was a rude awakening. He became a radio operator stationed in China, Japan, and Hawaii. He learned structure, discipline, and resilience. But even in the military, he didn't quite fit in. Gene often found himself clashing with his superiors, questioning rules and pushing boundaries. His rebellious nature hadn't disappeared. It had just been buried under military uniforms and strict regulations. But something unexpected happened during those years. During long nights on duty, while other soldiers played cards or drank, Gene found himself daydreaming about something strange. For a Marine, acting, it was an odd dream for someone who had never been in a play, never taken a drama class, and never even seen the inside of a film set. But the dream was there, buried deep in his mind, waiting for the right moment to surface. After 3 years, Gene was honorably discharged from the Marines in 1951. Now he faced a problem. What next? With no high school diploma, and no clear career path. He bounced between odd jobs, working in factories doing radio work, and even enrolling in journalism school at the University of Illinois. But nothing felt right there. It was only one thing that kept calling to him: acting. And so, with no experience, no connections, and no money, he did something that most people would have called insane. He packed his bags and moved to New York City, determined to become an actor. Hollywood isn't kind to outsiders, and Gene learned that the hard way when he arrived in New York. Directors told him he didn't have the right face for Hollywood, but one thing kept him going: his friendship with two of the struggling actors. Dustin Hoffman and Robert Duvall. At the time, they were nobodies, just three broke dreamers living in tiny apartments. Taking whatever roles they could find, they leaned on each other, pushing each other to keep going. Even when it seemed hopeless, little did they know their big break was just around the corner. Gene eventually secured a minor role in the 1964 movie Lilith. After years of hardship, it was something even though it wasn't much. Everything then changed in 1967. He landed the role of Clyde's brother Buck Barrow, played by Warren Beatty in Bonnie. And Clyde, the movie, was a huge success and received several nominations. For Academy Awards, all of a sudden Gene Hackman was a burgeoning star, rather than just another struggling actor. Then came the part that would permanently alter his life. Gene was cast in The French Connection in 1971 as Popey Doyle. The texture was rough. It was unfiltered, not to be forgotten. Was his performance, in addition to becoming a classic. The movie earned Gene Hackman his first Academy Award for Best Actor once, laughed out of acting. School Demon was now a household celebrity in Hollywood. The parts came flooding in from there, solidifying his reputation as one of the greatest actors of all time with each movie. Then in 2004, Hackman made the unexpected decision to retire from acting after more than 50 years in the business. No big goodbye. And without making a big splash, he just turned to leave as if he was resolved to never be seen again. He quietly never appeared in public, gave interviews and rarely left his home. For what reason? Because there was nothing left for him to prove. Instead, he focused on writing, which was another love of his after becoming a writer. He published several novels and led a peaceful life away from the bustle of Hollywood. Hackman, in his 90s, lived a quiet life. In New Mexico, he was sometimes seen riding his bike and appeared to be in good health. Most stars found it difficult to leave the spotlight, but Hackman appeared, happy writing novels and leading a quiet life in Santa Fe, New Mexico. However, was it really that easy? His estate was the subject of odd stories, despite his retirement appearing to be normal. Some residents talked in whispers of strange nighttime activities, including cars coming and going, without warning, and individuals moving in the darkness for years. Nobody gave it any thought. Why would a famous actor be involved in something questionable after all? But then, a subsequent incident compelled the FBI to act. He was just taking pleasure in the calm life, according to those close to him. Some thought he had something to hide. One of the few individuals who saw him on a regular basis was his wife, Betsy Arakawa. He and Betsy Arakawa had been together for decades, and in spite of his fame, he maintained a strong bond with the love story between he and Arakawa, developed behind closed doors, away from the prying eyes of the public, in contrast to many Hollywood marriages that took place in front of flashing security cameras. She was the only one who had a genuine relationship with them, and behind the legendary performances for decades, even their romance, however, was covered in mystery. But why did Hackman take such extreme measures to maintain the secrecy of their relationship? Despite Gene Hackman's few words and even fewer public appearances, one aspect of his life never changed: his first heartbreak, and the surprising turn that brought him to Betsy, the woman who would support him through it all. Before his Hollywood aspirations took off, Hackman fell in love with a young woman named Faye Maltz, whom he married long before he met Betsy. While Hackman was still trying to establish himself, they got married in 1956 as he hopped between odd jobs, audition after audition, rejection after rejection. Faye was there for him for years. Everything then changed. In 1967, Hackman became a household name, quickly due to his breakthrough performance in Bonnie and Clyde. More movies, more interviews, more red carpet appearances. Hollywood wanted more of him, and as his fame soared, his marriage started to fall apart when he was Annabody Faye was by his side nevertheless. A rising star, the demands of success forced them to part ways. Their marriage ended in 1986, after 30 years, although Hackman didn't talk about it much. Some who knew him say it left a lasting scar that made him reluctant to let anyone inside his heart again. Then he met Betsy Hackman. Hadn't come across Betsy Irawa before. She was a businesswoman and a gifted pianist who was uninterested in Hollywood stardom, and maybe Hackman fell in love with her for precisely that reason when they first met. Hackman was still married to Faye in the early 1980s. However, he and Betsy's bond deepened following his divorce, in contrast to his first marriage. Hackman refused to allow his public profile to get in the way of their 1991 marriage. No lavish wedding in Hollywood, no candid talks about their romance, and no public appearances together. Together, they led a peaceful New Mexico, where they might actually fade into obscurity once he retired from performing in 2004. But was Hackman's isolation really a means of preserving their romance? Or was his choice to leave public life motivated by something darker? Since Hackman's actions got increasingly covert over the years, it's possible that even Betsy, the person he trusted the most, was unaware of all the secrets he was harboring. At the end of 2023, a shift occurred in an apparent display of paranoia. Hackman reportedly forbade maintenance personnel from approaching specific parts of his property. He avoided long-standing friends and even neighbors, as if he was nervous. Tragic events then occurred. A few weeks later, news of Gene Hackman's death at age 95 surfaced in February 2025. He died of heart disease, according to reports, which was not surprising for a guy of his age. However, what followed was even more disturbing. Hackman's wife, Betsy Arakawa, was discovered dead in their house a few days after Hackman passed away. She had a medical emergency, according to the official account. But there were rumors that something wasn't right. Why did she die so quickly after Hackman? What prevented either of them from having a public memorial, and why in the months before his death had Hackman been behaving suddenly? Then came an even more devastating revelation. Authorities first believed that there was nothing odd about Hackman and his wife's deaths as they went over the property's paperwork. However, they saw something. Hackman had been doing a lot of research in the months prior to his passing. His home office was devoid of his personal paperwork, and among his possessions were odd, unidentified plans. Why were these plans created? They described a vast system of underground tunnels that had never been formally documented, which surprised investigators. When they looked into them at this point, the case took a sharp turn. The reason the FBI was called in was not because Hackman had died, but rather because of what he might have known prior to his passing. The FBI raided the mansion in full because there were too many unresolved issues. When FBI agents first uncovered the hidden entrance in Hackman's estate, they thought it was just an old storage basement, but as they descended further, they realized this was something else entirely. The tunnel was massive, far too large to be a personal hideout. It stretched hundreds of feet underground, its walls reinforced with thick concrete and steel beams. This wasn't something Hackman had built himself. It had been there for decades. But why then? They found the steel door, old, rusted and locked. From the inside, agents worked quickly to force it open, and when it finally creaked open, what they saw left them speechless. Beyond the door lay a massive underground chamber filled with abandoned equipment, strange documents, and something even more disturbing: walls covered in cryptic notes and symbols, written in a language that some believed to be old military code. Stacks of classified documents, some dating back to the 1940s, stamped with government insignias. Large storage containers, sealed shut, their contents unknown. The deeper they went, the worse it got. At the center of the chamber was a large metallic structure resembling some kind of containment unit. It was old, covered in dust, but its design was advanced far beyond what should have existed when this tunnel was first constructed. There were records indicating that something or someone had been kept there. One document found tucked away in a corner contained a single warning: do not open under any circumstances. As the FBI analyzed the documents, a terrifying theory emerged. The records suggested that Hackman's mansion had been built over an abandoned Cold War-era facility, one that was never meant to be discovered. The project, reportedly shut down in the 1950s, was linked to classified experiments conducted by the US government. Some believed it was related to nuclear research, while others whispered about biological testing gone wrong. Had Hackman stumbled upon this secret before his death? And more disturbingly, had someone silenced him to keep it buried? As FBI agents examined the sealed storage containers, they knew they had reached the heart of the mystery, but sources close to the case suggest that what they found was so shocking beyond explanation that it changed the entire direction of the investigation. Whatever it was, the government acted swiftly. Within hours, federal authorities sealed off the site, transporting the contents to an undisclosed location. Hackman's rise to fame wasn't instant. It wasn't easy, and it definitely wasn't handed to him. He was rejected, mocked, and told he would never make it. But he never stopped believing in himself, and in the end he proved everyone wrong. So the next time someone tells you you can't do something, just remember neither could Gene Hackman until he did.